He's small, he's hated, and he's one of the most disruptive players the NHL has ever seen. Brad Marchand is the complete opposite of what you would expect from a traditional NHL player, especially in a league that for most of its history was obsessed with size, toughness, and straight up nail guns. Yeah, with him just being barely 5'9" and only weighing about 180 pounds, it seemed like he would never achieve anything that great. So how is it possible that a small forward, mocked, fined, and underestimated almost his entire career, became a 100-point scorer, Stanley Cup champion twice, a two-time first-team All-Star, and one of the most feared playoff performers in the modern NHL? Well, to understand this, we need to go back to his roots in the small town of Hammonds Plains, Nova Scotia, where his journey to the NHL began. Brad Marchand grew up in a small town outside Halifax, Nova Scotia, as the oldest of 4 kids in a true hockey family. His parents were local hockey coaches, Lynn and Kevin Marchand, and his father had once been an infamous junior hockey enforcer who put up 358 penalty minutes in a single season. That tenacity ran in Brad's blood. As his mom likes to joke, he came out of the womb mischievous. Young Marshy was the kid who was always up at dawn, lacing up his skates by the fireplace at 4 a.m., dragging his dad to the rink for 5 a.m. practices. He lived and breathed hockey from the start. But for all his passion, Marchand wasn't a prodigy. In fact, I was never the best kid on my team. Anyone will tell you that, he later admitted. At age 12, he heard a coach lay out the cold truth. Out of the thousands of kids like him, maybe 0.01% would ever make it to the NHL. It was a tough pill to swallow. How could a short, scrappy kid who wasn't even the top player on his pee-wee team defy those odds? The answer came from his attitude, a chip on his shoulder that would become his trademark. That same year, during a heated youth game, a kid on the other team crushed Brad's younger brother with a huge open ice hit. His brother was down, and you could see something switch in Brad. His dad, who was coaching, leaned over the bench and told the guys, next shift, every time that kid touches the puck, hit him. And that's what they did. Shift after shift, they went after this guy. Didn't matter that he was bigger, Brad and his teammates just kept grinding him down, getting under his skin, stirring the pot until he snapped and took a penalty. While he was in the box, Brad's team scored the game winner. That's when it clicked for him. If pure skill wasn't enough to get noticed, maybe being a thorn in everyone's side was. He figured out there was another way to make an impact, by being the guy no one wanted to play against. He found out that playing on the edge gave him an edge. I liked getting under their skin and rattling them, Marchand said of his youth hockey days. He was willing to be the villain if it meant winning. As he put it, maybe it was my size, but I've always felt like you have to be willing to do anything. Literally anything in order to win, even if that means being hated. It might have been born out of necessity, but Brad took that role head on. If I played the game any other way, he later said, you absolutely would not know my name. The way I played the game got me noticed by junior teams and eventually got me drafted by the Boston Bruins at 5'9". Armed with grit and an absurd ability to agitate, Marchand climbed the ranks of junior hockey in Canada. He wasn't a top pick at the junior level either. Moncton snagged him in the second round at 24th overall. Between 2004 and 2008, he bounced around 3 different junior teams in the QMJHL, from the Moncton Wildcats to the Val-d'Or Fureur to the Halifax Mooseheads. And wherever he went, he produced. In his best junior season with Val-d'Or, he put up 80 points in 57 games. And that was all while still being a complete pest to play against. By now, coaches and scouts had started to notice that despite his size, Marchand had an engine that wouldn't quit and a knack for being in the right place to bury and the wrong place for opponents to stir up trouble. The NHL scouting report on Marchand was mixed. Sure, he had skill, he could put up points in junior, but he was small and played with a mean streak that some thought was too risky. Many teams doubted whether his game would translate to the show, but one team believed in him, the Boston Bruins. The Bruins, known for loving hard-nosed players, saw something of a Boston spirit in Marchand's scrappiness. In the 2006 NHL entry draft, Boston went out of its way to get him, even making a trade with the New York Islanders to secure the 71st overall pick and grab Marchand in the 3rd round. It wasn't a headline-grabbing selection. 3rd-round picks rarely are. But for Brad, it was a dream come true. Still, the message was clear. Nothing would be handed to him. A 3rd rounder listed at 5'9" had to scratch and claw to earn a spot in an NHL lineup. And that's exactly what he set out to do. Marchand turned pro in 2008, making his debut with the Providence Bruins in the AHL. There, he learned the ropes of the pro game against grown men, some nearly twice his size. He quickly made an impression with his energetic playstyle. He was the kind of rookie who finished every check, chirped veterans, and left it all on the ice every night. By the fall of 2009, a 21-year-old Marchand got the call he'd been fighting for. The Bees gave him the nod for the NHL. Brad Marchand entered the NHL in October 2009, flying under the radar. No ultimate introduction, just another call-up trying to stick. He didn't score a single goal in his first 20 games that season. He was grinding on the fourth line, averaging limited minutes and doing more penalty killing than scoring. But that was fine by Brad. He'd play whatever role the team asked. He bounced around between Providence and Boston for that year, and eventually made the full-time switch for the 2010-2011 season. It didn't take him long to notch his first NHL suspension as a full-timer, a 2-game suspy in March 2011 for elbowing Blue Jackets forward R.J. Umberger directly to the dome. It was an early hint of the controversies to come, but also proof he wasn't afraid to get in the mix. As that 2010-11 season progressed, Bruins fans began to appreciate the spark this little rat brought to the team. He exceeded everyone's expectations, potting 21 goals and 41 points in his first full NHL campaign. His efforts earned him Boston's 7th Player Award, given to the Bruin who most surpasses expectations as voted by the fans. A fan favorite agitator. Who would have thought? Marchand later said that the way Boston embraced him in that first year made me want to run through a wall for them. Then came the 2011 playoffs, the moment where Brad Marchand's underdog story really blew up. The Bruins entered the playoffs needing a Stanley Cup, something the franchise hadn't won in 39 years. Marchand hopped into the playoffs, just hoping to make an impact in whatever limited ice time he'd get. Initially slotted on the fourth line, he was doing the grinding with veterans Sean Thornton and Gregory Campbell. But early in the postseason, coach Claude Julien saw the spark in Marchand and bumped him up to the top 6. Out of nowhere, the kid who was sometimes a healthy scratch in the AHL was now trioed up with Patrice Bergeron and Mark Recchi, 2 seasoned stars. Marchand didn't let this slip. He scored his first playoff goal against Montreal in the first round, and the floodgates opened. The Bruins fought their way to the Stanley Cup final, and there, against the Vancouver Canucks, the NHL's top regular season team that year, the rookie turned into a clutch goal scorer and agitator. He scored 2 goals in the decisive Game 7 of the final, one of them an empty netter to seal the 4-0 victory. Throughout that championship run, Marchand tallied 19 points with 11 goals in 25 playoff games. Those 11 goals tied an NHL record for most by a rookie in the playoffs, equaling the mark set by the legendary Jeremy Roenick. In the biggest moments, on the biggest stage, the little kid from Nova Scotia delivered beyond anyone's expectations. But of course, this is Brad Marchand. He made sure to leave his pest mark on the final as well. In Game 6, with Boston having the chance to secure the cup, cameras caught Marchand repeatedly punching Canuck star Daniel Sedin in the face, right in front of the net and after the whistle. Sedin, a skill guy not known for fighting, just stood there and tanked 4 or 5 gloved punches as Marchand kept chucking them, begging him to retaliate. The refs, believe it or not, did not call a penalty. When asked after the game why he kept punching Sedin like that, Marchand smirked and replied, "Because I felt like it." That quote became an instant piece of hockey lore. The audacity of this rookie, roughing up an all-star and not even bothering with an excuse. It was vintage Marchand. Infuriating to opponents, a gem to Boston fans. When the Bruins finally hoisted the Stanley Cup in June 2011, Brad Marchand's transformation was complete. In less than 2 years, he had gone from fringe prospect to a Boston sports hero, a champion who scored some of the biggest goals in Bruins history. Even President Barack Obama, when welcoming the Bruins to the White House, joked about Marchand's infamous reputation, calling him the Bruins' little ball of hate, a nickname Marchand and the fans repped proudly. Brad was just 23, with a Stanley Cup ring on his finger. He had reached the mountaintop in record time. Little did anyone know, his wild ride was only just beginning, and as we know now, so were the controversies. With success came confidence. Maybe a bit too much confidence at times. Brad Marchand had proven his style of play could win at the highest level, and he fully leaned into his role as one of hockey's top pests. Over the next few seasons, he developed a reputation around the NHL as that guy, the pot stirrer, who'd do anything to throw you off your game. To Bruins fans, he was the best. You loved him on your side. To fans of the other 29 teams, he was quickly becoming one of the most hated players in hockey. Marchand's list of on-ice antics began to grow, and so did his rap sheet with the NHL's Department of Player Safety. In the 2011-2012 season, not long after his Stanley Cup run, he was fined $2,500 for slew-fitting Penguins D-man Matt Niskanen. Not long after that, he was suspended 5 games for a low hit, clipping, on Vancouver's Sami Salo that flipped the 6'3" defenseman head over heels, giving him a concussion. Marchand and head coach Claude Julien supported it as a self-defense move given Salo's size advantage, but around the league it cemented his image as a dirty player. The nickname The Rat, once used for a former Bruins pest Ken Linseman, was resurrected just for Marchand. He embraced that too. If people were going to call him a rat, he'd be the craftiest, most annoying rat he could be. Year after year, incident after incident, Marchand kept pushing the line. Elbows, slew foots, late hits. He had a catalog of controversy. He was suspended or fined practically every season, building a reputation as the NHL's most notorious pest. By 2018, he had been suspended 8 times in his career, the most of any active player, for a total of dozens of games lost. He had also licked not one, but 2 opponents on the face during the 2018 playoffs in one of the strangest incidents in modern NHL history. Yep, you heard that right. Licked. In round 1 of 2018, cameras caught Marchand skating up to Toronto's Leo Komarov after the whistle and literally licking his cheek or neck area to push some buttons. In round 2, he did it again, this time licking Tampa Bay's Ryan Callahan right on the face during a scrum. Hockey fans were shook. Classic Marchand pushing the bounds of sportsmanship. The NHL eventually had to step in and personally warn him to knock it off, deeming the lick unacceptable behavior. The whole saga made international headlines. Even non-hockey fans were like, what is wrong with this guy? Marchand, for his part, shrugged it off, but later admitted maybe he went a bit too far there. Through all of this, something important was happening. Brad Marchand was also becoming an elite hockey player. The same drive that fueled his antics also fueled his improvement on the ice. He trained harder, got stronger, and honed his skills to complement his grit. Where early in his career he was a 20-goal, 40-point guy, by the mid-2010s, he started to break out offensively in a big way. In the 2015-16 season, he scored 37 goals. In 2016-17, he finished tied for 5th in the entire NHL in points with Nikita Kucherov and earned a spot in the All-Star game. Suddenly, it wasn't just his pestering drawing attention, it was his point totals. He formed one of the league's most dominant lines alongside Patrice Bergeron and a young David Pastrnak, a trio Bruins fans proudly nicknamed the Perfection Line. By the end of the 2010s, Marchand was routinely putting up point-per-game seasons. The pinnacle came in 2018-2019. After the licking incidents and a series of fines and criticisms in 2018, Marchand publicly stated he was going to take a hard look in the mirror and clean up his act. Many were skeptical. Could the Rat really change his ways? Brad answered with his play. He exploded for 100 points that season, 36 goals, 64 assists. The first time in his career he'd hit the century mark. He was among the NHL's scoring elite. It was as if he channeled all that negative energy into pure performance. Boston made a run all the way to the Stanley Cup final in 2019, and Marchand was leading the charge. Now not just as an agitator, but as a certified star and assistant captain. The 2019 Stanley Cup final was supposed to be Marchand's big redemption, a shot at a second cup and a chance to silence the last of his critics. The Bruins battled the St. Louis Blues through a grueling 7-game series, but in Game 7, on home ice, Boston fell short. As the Blues celebrated, cameras caught Marchand slumped on the bench, head down, tears in his eyes. 8 years after his first cup, it hit him. This might have been the best chance to win another. The cocky kid from 2011 looked heartbroken. But in typical Marchand fashion, he used that pain to push even harder. In 2020, he was on pace for another 100-point season, with 69 points in 53 games. In 2021, he set a franchise record for the fastest overtime playoff goal and finished 5th in MVP voting. He killed penalties, ran the power play, led in shorthanded goals, and still stirred the pot. In 2021-22, he picked up his 7th and 8th suspensions, including one for punching Penguins goalie Tristan Jarry. By then, he held the dubious title of most suspended player in modern NHL history. Yet in the Bruins locker room, he'd become a respected leader. When Zdeno Chara left in 2020, Marchand became an alternate captain. And in 2023, after Patrice Bergeron hung them up, Boston gave him the C. The guy once seen as a loose cannon was now captain of one of the league's most historic teams, a moment earned through sheer will and loyalty to the crest. But change was coming fast. The The 2022-23 Bruins had a record-setting season with 65 wins and blew a 3-1 series lead to Florida in round 1. The next year, Florida bounced them again, this time in round 2, and went on to win the Cup. The Panthers had become Boston's nemesis, younger, faster, and clearly the future. For Marchand, now 36, it was a reality check. The Bruins were heading into a rebuild, and time was running out. On March 7th, 2025, he was traded to the Panthers. A shock to fans and even to Brad himself, but it was the perfect chance to chase one more cup. Swapping the spoked B for a panther on his jersey, Brad Marchand entered the Panthers locker room as the new guy, a strange feeling for a player who had only ever known one team. There were some familiar faces. Florida's roster had a few ex-Bruins and even ex-Devils that Marchand knew of, but also some familiar enemies. Sam Bennett, the Panthers forward who had delivered a controversial hit that injured Marchand in the 2024 playoffs, was now a teammate. So was Matthew Tkachuk, another notorious agitator cut from the same cloth as Marchand. Actually, fans joked that Florida now had an all-villain team with Marchand and Tkachuk together. The truth was, the Panthers had built a winning culture, and Marchand was coming in to add the final bit of veteran presence. And despite a minor injury delaying his Florida debut by a couple of weeks, he jumped in with his trademark intensity once he hit the ice. When Marchand finally tossed on the Panthers jersey in late March 2025, he made an immediate impact. In his very first game for Florida, on March 28th, he set up the overtime game-winning goal, a statement that he was there to help the Panthers win those big games. As the 2025 playoffs began, you could sense something special brewing. Marchand was slotted not on the top line, but on the third line, which took some pressure off and allowed him to play with a bit more freedom and young energy. In the second round, the Panthers ran into the Toronto Maple Leafs, and in a pivotal Game 7, Marchand's experience shined. This was his 13th career Game 7, tying him for the second most in NHL history, and remarkably, his 5th Game 7 against Toronto alone. Leafs fans, surely sick of him by now, had to watch him do it again. Marchand delivered with a 3-point night, including 2 assists and an empty net goal to seal a 6-1 victory. Toronto was defeated, literally, and Brad moved on, again at their expense. As the Panthers kept winning, Marchand kept elevating his game. In the conference finals, and then the Stanley Cup final, he was everywhere, scoring, killing penalties, chirping opponents, leading by example. The 2025 Stanley Cup final pitted Florida against the powerhouse Edmonton Oilers squad, led by the best player in the world, Connor McDavid. It was the ultimate showdown, the flashy, skilled Oilers versus the gritty, relentless Panthers. And who should stand in McDavid's way? Brad Marchand, of course, the grizzled veteran trying to cap his underdog story. Game 2 of the final went to double overtime in Edmonton. It was a turning moment. Edmonton had taken Game 1, and the Panthers desperately needed to even the series. In that second overtime, Anton Lundell threaded a perfect pass through the neutral zone, sending Marchand in alone on a breakaway. With ice in his veins, he slid the puck 5-hole on Stuart Skinner, ending the marathon game. There was Brad, at 37 years old, being mobbed by teammates, having just delivered one of the biggest goals in Panthers history. That goal tied the series 1-1 and swung the momentum Florida's way. It also made Marchand the oldest player ever to score an overtime goal in a Stanley Cup final. By Game 3, Marchand was on an absolute tear. He scored just 56 seconds into the game to give Florida an early lead, his 8th goal of the playoffs, and amazingly, his 3rd consecutive goal in the final. In doing so, he broke a 52-year-old record held by Hall of Famer Frank Mahovlich, becoming the oldest player to score in Games 1, 2, and 3 of a Cup final. He was writing his name into the history books. By the time the series reached Game 6 back in Florida, Marchand had tallied 6 goals in the final alone, and 10 goals in total during that playoff run. The Panthers, inspired by his leadership and clutch play, closed out the Oilers in Game 6 with a convincing 5-1 win, clinching their 2nd consecutive Stanley Cup, and Marchand's 2nd cup of his career, 14 years after his first. As the final seconds ticked down, Marchand took a moment in the middle of the chaos. He skated slowly down the slot, pointing up to the stands where his wife, kids, and family were watching. He had been away from them for 3 months chasing his dream. His wife Katrina and their children stayed back in Boston during the trade. Now he was wordlessly telling them, "We did it." Katrina burst into tears of joy in the stands, later saying, "It's worth it. We did it. He works his butt off every single day, and to see it come to this after what he's been through, this means the world." When Conn Smythe, playoff MVP, votes were tallied, Marchand was a close second with 68 points, narrowly missing what would have been a storybook MVP. as Panthers forward Sam Bennett edged him out with 76 points. Bennett, however, was quick to credit Marchand. "I truly don't think we win a Stanley Cup without him. His leadership, his will to win, it's inspiring. He was a dog every night, and he for sure could have won this Conn Smythe trophy. He's a better player and person than I ever knew, and I'm grateful I got to play with him." This from a guy who once punched Marchand directly in the head, now transformed into a fan. Marchand had earned the respect of peers who used to hate playing against him. The hockey world was officially humbled. As Marchand lifted the Stanley Cup and later carried it around the ice, he couldn't help but look back to 2011. "It feels completely different," he said of winning it now, so much later in his career. "I have so much more respect and appreciation for how difficult it was to get here. My situation is a perfect example. I shouldn't have been here, but it worked out, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it." Classic Brad, blunt and truthful. Indeed, the odds of a 5'9", 37-year-old switching teams mid-season and winning a cup are slim to none. But if anyone was going to defy the odds, it was Marchand. Winning the 2025 Stanley Cup was the ultimate validation of Brad Marchand's journey. It wasn't just that he got his name on the cup again, it was how he did it, playing a key role in proving all the doubters wrong one last time. And in true Marchand fashion, he didn't celebrate quietly. Now, the fresh offseason of 2025 is basically becoming the summer of Brad. First, there was the social media trolling spree that could go down in history as peak Marchand. Just days after the victory, he took to Instagram and posted a series of tongue-in-cheek thank you messages to various NHL teams for giving away players that helped the Panthers win. He specifically tagged the Calgary Flames, thanking them for Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, the Sabres for Reinhart, and the Flyers for Bobrovsky. He effectively rubbed salt in the wounds of any team that had ever let a useful player go to Florida. Oof. Fans from all these clubs cringed seeing that, but Marchand wasn't done. No one was safe from his post-win trolling. He went through every non-Panthers team and posted some jabs, thanking them for a player one by one. It was exhaustive and hilariously petty. Classic Marchand mocking the entire league, cup in hand. And then there was the bit with the Edmonton Oilers, the team they just dusted in the final. Marchand appeared in an Instagram story wearing a t-shirt with the Oilers logo, but instead of Oilers, the logo read Losers. Talk about a savage victory lap. That image went viral. Some hockey fans laughed, shaking their heads. "Oh, Brad, never change." Even some Oilers fans said they found it darkly funny or all in good fun. And of course, others called it classless and fuel for other teams to gun for him next year. But the trolling did not end. In Florida, other than of course on the ice, he became an instant icon off the ice as well. During the celebratory parade and parties, he was in peak form. At one point, just days after lifting the cup, he popped up at a local Dairy Queen in Sunrise, Florida. But not just as a customer. Marchand was behind the counter, cheesing and serving his very own custom Blizzard flavor, the chocolate chirp cookie dough Blizzard. Fans lined up out the door as Brad handed out ice cream cones and took pictures, loving every second of it. It was absurd, it was fun, and it was definitely on brand. The local press dubbed it evidence that his trade to Florida unleashed a new, lighter side of Marchand, that he was finally playing and living with complete freedom and joy. After all, winning has a way of bringing out the best in everyone. As the summer rolls on, Marchand hints that he isn't done yet. Now an unrestricted free agent, his Boston contract had ended with that cup win, he joked with Florida's GM Bill Zito that he might just buy a Dairy Queen to stay in town. In other words, Brad is loving life as a Panther, and likely to stick around. From Stanley Cup champion to social media king to ice cream VIP, the legend of Brad Marchand has grown larger. Yet, beyond the antics and trolling, the core of Marchand's story is something that resonates with so many sports fans. The underdog who refused to quit. He entered the league to very little introduction. He was told he was too small, was cast as a villain, got knocked down, sometimes by his own doing, but kept getting back up. And in the end, he earned respect. Respect from his teammates who followed him into battle, respect from coaches who trusted him in almost every situation, even reluctantly respect from rivals who learned that as much as they hated the pest, they feared the player. He literally humbled the NHL's best on multiple occasions, from scoring 2 goals in Game 7 of a final as a rookie to outdueling the great Connor McDavid in 2025. Brad Marchand's name is now on the Stanley Cup twice, 14 years apart. He's a member of the 1,000 Games Played Club and near 1,000 points in his career at 980, a milestone few would have predicted for him back in 2006. He's been an NHL All-Star, a 100-point scorer, a defensive ace, and yes, one of the most suspended players ever. His story is one of contradictions blended into something extraordinary: the villain who became a leader, the agitator who became an all-star, the hated rival who became the beloved champion. In the final analysis, the same fiery spirit that made Brad Marchand a lightning rod for criticism is what fueled his incredible success. He needed that edge, that willingness to do anything. As he once said again, "If I played the game any other way, I wouldn't be in the NHL." And he's right. By being unapologetically himself, by embracing the underdog mentality and outworking, outsmarting, and outbattling opponents at every turn, Brad Marchand carved out a legacy that will be talked about for years. He turned doubters into believers and haters into witnesses of his greatness. This is how an undersized, underestimated forward humbled the entire NHL. By proving that heart matters more than height, that a pest can become a powerhouse, and that no amount of hate can stop a man who simply hates losing even more. Love him or despise him, Brad Marchand's story is the ultimate hockey underdog tale, one that, much like Brad himself, no one saw coming. Thank you for watching. If you want to hear the story of another NHL legend who broke all the rules in his own way, partying all night and still tearing up the league, check out our video on Guy Lafleur, the NHL star who partied every night and still destroyed everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your favorite Brad Marchand moments in the comments. See you in the next one.